you mentioned two words, purpose and presence, and I think they're actually very much connected. Like we have books in the world like The Power of Now, because people find it so difficult just to be present in the moment. And what the ancient teachers explain is that one of the reasons why we can't be present is because we haven't found purpose. When our present is almost an anticlimax, when it doesn't resonate with our heart, when it's not exciting, enthusing, enthralling enough, then naturally we gravitate to the past or the future. But what the ancient teachers explain is that when we're situated in our purpose and we're living according to our potential, then it's so exciting that we're naturally present. And so there's almost a connection between purpose and presence.
SB Keshava Swami, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Petra. It's a real honor to be here and happy to have this conversation today.
Yeah, thank you, because I know I feel like it's a real privilege to have this one-on-one time with you. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And already instantly, I know we just spoke, I just feel more relaxed already, just kind of sitting here in front of you. So I think it really does speak true to the kind of energy field that people have around each other as well. And you emanate such a positive sort of energy, and I feel peaceful. And so I kind of wanted to start with that, because I've spoken about energy a lot in the podcast before, and how we can kind of tap into each other's feelings and energy. You've led this monastic life now for quite a while. Is that something that comes naturally to you, to kind of tap into that and kind of feel what others are feeling around you as well?
Yeah, thank you so much. I also feel very natural in these situations. It's actually said in Eastern spirituality to be in contact with the earth is a very beautiful thing. In India today, you'll also find that people just walk barefoot everywhere, because it's said that by being in contact with the minerals and the energy and just the substance of the earth has a very powerful effect on one's consciousness. And nowadays we don't walk or contact the earth. Actually, we're either flying in planes or riding in cars. And if we are walking, we're walking with shoes on, with Skechers on.
Shout out.
Shout out there. So it's just nice to be sitting on the ground, and even though we are in a building, but the energy around us creating a habitat. When I became a monk at the age of 21 and I joined the monastery, then one of the first things we were taught is the power of the environment and the energies around us. In the ancient book called the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, the speaker, explains that our surroundings are pervaded by three types of energy. One type of energy is known as a kind of covering energy, an ignorant energy. And then another type of energy is a passionate or a creative energy. And another one is a goodness energy, a kind of illuminating energy. And everything we interact with in the world can be affected by any one or a combination of these three. And so when we optimize our diet, when we optimize our living space, when we optimize the times of day in which we function, then we begin to create a certain energy around us that then creates an energy within us. And it's a very powerful science.
Yeah, you can feel it when you walk in a room sometimes. And I think we follow logic a lot. We follow our mind and brain, and that has its place too. But we just don't, I think, tap into our body enough, and we just don't listen to it. And I think it has so much wisdom. And I'm sure that because you've kind of dedicated a lot of your time into looking into not only your mind but body and spirit as well, it's a practice that probably comes more natural. So when you don't have time, or maybe you've not you're not able to dedicate as much time as you would like to that. What kind of nuggets of wisdom do you have for people that they can do to tap into their body?
Yeah. I usually share with people 4 really important things that they can change about their environment that will create almost an instantaneous and immediate change in their kind of conscious state. The first one I share with people is rise before the sun, the time you get up in the morning.
That's something I do not do.
I started with the hardest one. Because when we start the day with intention, when we start the day by balancing the inner world before we enter the external world, then it means we come out into this world with almost a protection around us because we've fortified our own consciousness. And so the first kind of basic habit is just rising before the sun or rising with the sun and having some intention before you get into the madness of daily life. The second habit I share with people is diet and what we kind of put into our body. Of course, we know the old adage that you are what you eat, but just eating fresh food, eating healthy food, eating food which hasn't, kind of caused any violence, and trying to eat that food at regulated times and also eat that food in a very conscious way. And if you think about those 4 or 5 tips on diet, if we were just able to follow that, we'd actually see a huge effect in our consciousness. So the energy that is created by your diet is the second thing. I think the third thing I share with people is the people around them. We're so much a combination of the energies of the people who we allow into our lives. And of course, some of it we don't have a choice over. We work with certain people. We're on the tube with certain people. We can't make a choice. But we do have a choice over who we choose to spend our time with and allow into our life in a more intimate way. And so if we're really conscious about that, then that habit or that lifestyle choice has a huge effect on our energy. And I would say the fourth thing I share with people that can have a huge effect on your consciousness and your energy is the amount of clutter in your life. And we have this kind of concept of simple living, high thinking. And the power of just decluttering your environment and how that declutters your mind. And when I talk to people about decluttering, it could be anything from decluttering your phone and all the apps, unnecessary apps that are there. It could be decluttering your desk at work. It could be decluttering your car. It could be decluttering your wardrobe. It could be any of these things, just creating room. Like we're in quite a nice room here and it's not cluttered and immediately you can feel the energy. So yeah, I guess those are the kind of 4 habits: your sleeping time, your diet, your company, and the declutter that you can.
It's making me feel already better thinking about decluttering. And it's what I was saying. It just gives that space for you to dedicate a bit more time to just you and focusing on you. So how do you eat consciously?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Well, I think the first thing is when we eat, number one, we don't multitask. Nowadays, people eat and watch TV, or they eat and they have like a really deep conversation with someone, or they eat and they kind of answer their emails at the same time. And one of the most basic things that is given in spiritual culture about eating is just eat and don't do anything else. And just give your full concentration to the task, because, it's probably one of the most important things you do in the day, because it's where you energize and refuel your body. So the first thing is do it as a single task, don't multitask. The second thing is eating consciously means to chew. It sounds so crazy, but it said that unless you actually chew the food a certain amount of times, you don't actually get the full benefit of what you're actually ingesting. And so to kind of chew multiple times. The third thing that's given is an interesting one. In actually Eastern culture, it's said that you should actually eat with your hands, which you still see to this day in ancient. So the idea of touching your food and feeling its texture actually is said to immediately, before you even put it in your mouth, it immediately begins to get certain enzymes and things in your body moving.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so you'll find that, you'll see the monks definitely, they eat with their fingers.
I've got quite a funny story on that actually, because my father's from the Middle East, and we definitely, people from the Middle East eat with their hands quite a lot.
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law invited a kind of neighbour over, and they had this big fish on the barbecue and with rice, and he started to kind of open it up with his hands, and the poor lady was just completely mortified looking at it. But you're right, it's just getting back to nature again, isn't it? And just being a bit more, connected to the things around you, even if it's food or people or whatever that is. So going back to the kind of monastic path and being a monk, I guess that follows a lot of stereotypes that people might have about the word monk. But what does being a monk mean? And second question to that is, when did you know that this was your purpose in life?
Yeah, thank you so much. The first interesting thing is that people think of monastic life as a lifelong commitment, whereas in the ancient Eastern culture, monastic life was actually something that everyone did for a period of their life. Some people were monks for a week, for a month, for a year, some for 10. And then after taking that period of monastic training, they would then go out into the world and do amazing things, but with those principles embedded within them. So the idea of spending some time in a monastery, or what we call in Sanskrit an ashram, is that in order to really find ourselves, in order to really hear the inner calling, in order to get in touch with a deeper sense of self-awareness, it's so important just to step away from our normal environment. Sometimes in life, we're surrounded by so many voices, the voices of other people's opinions, the voices of society's trends, the voices of the media, which tells you what success is. And in the midst of hearing and being bombarded by all those voices, we never hear our inner calling. And then later on, we pursue a life of goals, and sometimes we achieve those goals, and we realize, but they weren't actually my self with their divine connection and understand their purpose. And so at the age of 21, after graduating from university, I felt like that's what I had to do. Here I was as a 21-year-old. I had a degree in computer science and management. I had a job at a prestigious company lined up in London. And I just felt the need to step away from it all, just to make sure that this was actually my path. And so at 21, I went to India, and it was an amazing experience. We lived in different ashrams. We contacted different very saintly people. And most of all, it just gave me an opportunity to be in a different environment. We'd wake up very early. We'd sleep on the floor. All our possessions would fit into a locker. And we'd spend our days meditating, studying spiritual wisdom, and really chalking out a vision for our lives. So it was an amazing time. And I said most people usually spend a period of their life as a monk, But for me, it became such a calling that I decided to take lifelong vows of monasticism. So, yeah, I decided to embrace the path of lifelong renunciation and monasticism. So, yeah, that's something, I guess.
Yeah. To spirituality, but I guess from a outsider's point of view, that's quite a selfless thing to do. But also on the flip side, I imagine also very fulfilling, because it must bring so much joy to yourself as well, being able to just focus on your inner self, and then being able to help other people with that. Do you grieve your old life and old self?
I don't think I ever look back at any period of my life and feel like disappointed or feel like I want to transport myself back to that. I think I've appreciated all periods of my life, even the period of my life before monastic life, because I think every period of my life gave me certain gifts. And I feel like where I am now is where I want to be. And probably 10 years, 15 years from now, I'll be in a different place. And I hope that will be the place I want to be. I think it's just an evolution that continues getting better and better, hopefully. And yeah, it's a super fulfilling life. People in today's day and age, they have so many things that they're struggling with, and that if they're able to work through, they could achieve incredible and amazing things in their life. In the world we're living in today, for example, the mind is something that everyone's battling with. And from what I've learned in the monastery and through these spiritual teachings, I've just seen the power that they have in helping people deal with their daily struggles. And so, yeah, we go into all kinds of forums. We just came back from the United States, and in 30 days, we did like 80 events.
Wow.
And we went to corporate firms. We did like Intel, Google, Apple. We went to universities, Princeton, Stanford, NYU, Berkeley, many. We went to government organizations. And it's just so incredible to see how ancient wisdom is so versatile and powerful in addressing just the needs of people today.
How do you find that people are kind of receiving that information then, especially in the corporate world, and not just the US, but in general? I know that some of these spiritual teachings can be, to a lot of people who aren't maybe well versed in some of it, can be a bit, they say, woo-woo, which is just a bit too out there or far-fetched. So lofty, what's the vibe? Like, what vibe are you getting?
Yeah. I think in the world we're living in today, people are a little bit standoffish about religion. Mm-hmm. We turn on the news every day and we see the potentiality that religion has sometimes to cause conflict, to cause division, to cause animosity and aggression. But I think the interesting thing is people are, I think, more than ever open to spirituality, the idea that there is something beyond knowledge, which, as you said, sometimes feels to be a little out there, very lofty, very otherworldly, very philosophical and theological, and take all of that knowledge and kind of break it down for people in such a way that if they want to learn like how to make good decisions, or if they want to learn how to find love, or if they want to know how to avoid burnout, or if they want to learn how to find their purpose, then they can draw all of that from spiritual teachings. Ivan Pavlov, he says, if you want to find a new idea, go to an old book. And so there's a sense in which whenever I read the ancient scriptures, I'm like, wow, this is what everyone's looking for. But it just has to be brought to people in a relevant way.
Yeah. So with the ancient scriptures, it's something that's fairly new to me in terms of the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita that you mentioned, and your book, Tattva 2 as well, which I will link.
Yeah.
So with those, I guess what I'm trying to say is you hear a lot of opinions these days. We've got social media, we have the media, like you said earlier, that are just kind of bombarding us with different things. And then we have these ancient scriptures. And we also have some spiritual teachers that have written books, but then have also said later on, or have evolved in their kind of way of thinking as well. So how important is it, I guess, to stick to those ancient scriptures, and how do we know what is true and what to follow in this day? It's quite a hard question, probably, but it's something that's
really... What impressed me when I came to the monks who were teaching the Bhagavad Gita is that they presented the Bhagavad Gita as a spiritual science. Now, for me, that was somewhat of a revelation, because I had almost in my mind created a somewhat of an aggressive demarcation between science and spirituality. And here was the monk who was telling me that, no, this is a spiritual science. And I said, but how can spirituality be scientific? And he said, well, science means there's a hypothesis, there's an experiment, and then there's a conclusion. So he said, all we're asking you to do is take these nuggets of wisdom, these spiritual worldviews, and just kind of implement it in your life. Meditate, wake up early, study this wisdom, introspect on it, adjust certain aspects of your life, and see whether it triggers any kind of higher consciousness. And then he said, you'll know for yourself whether it actually works, because the truth is ultimately what works. And so I kind of began to approach the Bhagavad Gita in that way. Not that I was almost just pouring all of my faith into this blindly and then kind of just keeping my fingers crossed that, it would come out good at some point. But to just approach it in the mood of, let's give it a go as a spiritual scientist. And so I guess that's how I've always approached spirituality. And I guess that's how I present it to people as well. It's interesting that at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, as you know, it's a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, who's like a warrior asking many questions. And after delivering all the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna looks at Arjuna and he says, I've given you all the knowledge. Now think about it, challenge it, reflect on it, introspect, and then do what you want to do. In other words, he just asks Arjuna to kind of use his own faculty of discrimination and become a spiritual scientist. And so when I share spiritual knowledge with the people, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, I don't share it so much in the mood of this is an ancient theology which you have to have faith in, which you have to believe. But I just share it more in the sense of a spiritual science, that it has tools for you that can empower you on every level, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Give it a try.
Yeah, it's important to know that it's not just doctrine, and it's something that can be interpreted and and applied. And like you said, if it works for you, if you see that the quality of your life or the quality of people around you is high and works for you, then you know that it's working. And so it means that we don't have to take everything that people say or that is written as word, but it's there for us. And if we want to take different sections of it and apply them and see if that works, then we have the kind of liberty to do that, I guess.
I think it's I think there's some kind of this fear amongst people that as you approach a spiritual tradition, you have to give up your intelligence, you have to give up your kind of questioning capacity, and you just kind of have to just become very submissive. And I think it's actually the complete opposite, that coming to a spiritual literature and a spiritual tradition is meant to empower you to question more, to challenge more. It's almost like it should actually create an inquisitiveness within you more.
build that curiosity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely.
Yeah.
So do you work with children? Do you work in it's one of those things where I have the world on my shoulders and I'm thinking, how can I just solve suffering? And even though I know suffering is necessary, and I guess we can talk to that as well, but I think the kind of thing it always boils down to is the next generation. So implementing that into education and schools, I think, is so important. But I know we probably have a long way to go. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I really agree with you. Sometimes rather than fixing the old, it's just better to create the new. And that's not to say that we shouldn't try to solve the problems that are around us now, but really the most progressive thing we can do is to work with a new generation and to create unity, harmony, to create understanding and appreciation amongst that generation. And so, I think working with children is amazing. I just came back from Ghana, actually. I was in West Africa. And in Accra, we actually have a school there for 200 children. Spending some time with them. And you actually see that children have an incredible capacity to absorb knowledge. And because children haven't yet been bombarded by a kind of stereotypical image or kind of like, judgments of others, they can kind of see things quite innocently. And if they're empowered with spiritual knowledge from a young age, then you can see how more individuals like that in the world will actually create a lot more harmony. So, we have schools in our communities. That's a huge thing. And what we're also trying to do is bring like books like the Bhagavad Gita as part of one of our projects here, Think Gita, where we run courses on the Bhagavad Gita. We're actually producing a book for the children on the Bhagavad Gita, so that they can begin absorbing some of that spiritual wisdom from a young age and really becoming change makers in the world, conscious change makers.
Yeah, and giving them that space to kind of think differently and not just be conditioned as we, so often are when we're just programmed from us, from day dot to, the age of 7 where we're kind of developing that subconscious and it gives them that, space to be curious and then apply it if they want to later down the line, I guess. And it's a hard one because these days, we still have a very old curriculum in schools. And I just don't know when. I mean, I'm quite far removed. I don't have children yet, so I don't necessarily see that day to day. And the media, dominating our lives, basically.
No, I really resonate with what you're saying. I think the modern educational system sometimes tells us what to think instead of teaching us how to think. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, especially my years through like school and even university, I felt like I wasn't really being taught how to think. I was just kind of memorizing and kind of just just kind of packing in information. And I don't know how transformative it was. And so, to really have children be able to look at things critically and consciously, I think is powerful.
Yeah, presence is so powerful. It's something I, read daily now in any spiritual book. It's about being in the now, being in the moment, and a lot of people say that now. And I think there is a shift in consciousness that's happening, even though we are seeing so much pain still and suffering. I do believe that there's a kind of shift in the way that we use language these days as well. A lot of things I read are about primary purpose, which is more to do with being present, and your primary purpose in life is to go inwards basically, and tap into that inner wisdom and presence. And I guess a secondary purpose is of you and your personality, and the fact that we still need to, function in this world in physical form. And there are so many things that come with it that, that are enjoyable as well. There are some material things that I guess are enjoyable and that we can kind of benefit from. But for someone who really wants to know their purpose in life, more in terms of not primary purpose, because I believe that is really just being present and being in the moment. But the secondary purpose of someone who has to still function in this world, what advice would you give people to find that purpose?
Yeah, finding purpose is such a huge topic. Today we've been talking a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita. And one of the words that appears in the Bhagavad Gita again and again is Dharma, Dharma, Dharma. And it's actually said that the very first syllable of the Bhagavad Gita is Dhr, and the very last syllable of the Bhagavad Gita is Ma. And it said that the whole conversation is encapsulated to talk about Dharma, which literally means meaning or purpose or one's calling in life. Just to backtrack, you mentioned two words, purpose and presence, and I think they're actually very much connected. Like we have books in the world like The Power of Now, because people find it so difficult just to be present in the moment. And what the ancient teachers explain is that one of the reasons why we can't be present is because we haven't found purpose. When our present is almost an anticlimax, when it doesn't resonate with our heart, when it's not exciting, enthusing, enthralling enough, then naturally we gravitate to the past or the future. But what the ancient teachers explain is that when we're situated in our purpose and we're living according to our potential, then it's so exciting that we're naturally present. And so there's almost a connection between purpose and presence. And finding purpose is a huge topic. Books and books have been written on it. And I guess drawing from Far Eastern ideas and also the ideas of the Bhagavad Gita, the best way I've heard it explained is basically, if you imagine there are 4 circles. In one circle, it's what you're good at. In another circle, it's what you're naturally interested in and attracted to. In the third circle is the things which can earn you a living. And in the fourth circle, it's a contribution you can make to society. And it's almost like the intersection of all of those 4 things is your purpose. So if tomorrow you can find a job that you're good at, that you're attracted to, that earns you the money you need to survive in the world, and through which you can make an incredible contribution to the world, to people's lives, then you found your Dharma. And finding that Dharma or that purpose, I guess, is not an overnight thing. And I think you can't also figure it out in your head. I think we just need to become more self-aware, look at our strengths, weaknesses, try to honestly see what we're wired for, and then just go out there in the world and try different things. And constantly be looking to always move closer to your purpose. Because what happens is often people sell out for comfort and security, even when they know they haven't found their purpose. They'll stay in a job because it gives them comfort and security, but it's not really moving their heart. And so to have that bravery to keep moving out of your comfort zone to try to find your purpose, I think is super important.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of going out of your comfort zone to begin with. And sometimes I wonder what society would actually look like if we all were, kind of reaching for our Dharma. Because if we're all trying to be this kind of more aware, person, then what about the jobs that maybe people don't really want to do, but that some people do, that we need for society to function? And I guess it's still a materialistic society, and there's a lot of ego in it. So I'm wondering whether if we're all kind of aiming that way, it would just reshape society's landscape.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. There's a social body and there are different things which are needed in the world, and we all have our individual callings, and how do those two things kind of integrate? But it's actually said that by nature's arrangement, it's almost like you have an ecosystem. And in an ecosystem, by nature's arrangement, there's enough of every species to kind of balance the whole thing. If we would actually leave it to its natural course. It's amazing how there's enough of each species to kind of create the whole cycle so it goes on. And similarly, it's explained even within human society, because we are all very individual. It's not that everyone wants to be, the top of the corporate ladder. Some people are just very content with having a much more simple and steady and regulated life, and they don't need to necessarily be the top of the success ladder. And that's also success in itself, just to be in a natural state. And so I think another problem in the world today is we've equated success with getting to the top. And therefore everyone's striving for the top. But success is actually just to do what you're meant to do. Like Einstein says, everyone's a genius. But if you convince a fish that it has to climb a tree, it will live its whole life thinking it's a failure. And so we unnecessarily put pressure on people to be something they're not. So I think if people would actually follow their Dharma, then I think by nature's arrangement, it would actually make society a lot smoother. Because people would be doing what they're really meant to be doing.
Yeah, we like to control things, don't we? So there's an element of letting go, I think. And that leads me nicely to the topic of destiny, because that's something that is quite a mysterious thing that people still don't really, well, I'm definitely battling with in terms of, when we're born. Is this life already written out for us? Is it laid out? And, everything that we're, you hear that thing where people say, oh, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Or are we kind of, there's that law of attraction topic that we can touch on that says, actually, no, you attract things or you can manifest things. So what are your thoughts on the kind of, is life predestined? Or can we and do we have the power to, manifest the things that we desire?
Yeah, fascinating subject.
I could have another podcast just on that.
Another podcast on this. I was just at Stanford University, actually, as I was mentioning, in the US, and this was the very topic.
Right.
We were talking about the secret, the power of attraction, the law of attraction, and fate and free will. Let's see if in a couple of minutes I can summarize everything we talked about. We talked there about how if you imagine there's a line, a continuum, and on one side we have fate, and on another side we have free will. And on this side we say people have complete power, their consciousness creates the reality, and they have complete free will to manifest whatever they want. And on this side of the continuum is the idea that, as you said, it is what it is. Whatever you're destined to get is all karma, is all predestined. Where would we be on that continuum? According to the Bhagavad Gita, somewhere in the middle. Life is an interplay of fate and free will. If we didn't have free will, it would just mean we're kind of robotic entities, almost like cogs in the machine, no sentience, no influence. And clearly, that wouldn't really tally with what we see in the world today. We see that our consciousness, our desires, our efforts have an effect on our future. And so the Bhagavad Gita says we do indeed have free will. We do indeed have some power to attract, to manifest things. But the Bhagavad Gita says there is also an element of fate. that we come into this life with a certain karmic configuration. And so naturally, some people will have more opportunity to become wealthy or powerful, or some people come into this world with certain abilities innate. And therefore, there's a certain amount of predestiny as well. So according to the Bhagavad Gita, can we manifest our future? Yes, but we're not the sole architects of our future. So life is an interplay of fate and free will. So if you imagine that by your previous activities, you're now acting on a certain stage that's been created by your past activities. And that stage is the karma that you're experiencing right now. But on that stage of your karma, you have the free will to act how you want to act and dance how you want to dance, and that will create your next stage. And so life is an interplay of fate and free will. I don't know if that's...
karma is like the foundation of
it's
life.
Creating the context
it's creating
for you.
that context, and then you can kind of play it out
exactly
through it. I'm sure there are some people that karma's fairly new to. I mean, you hear it again. It's one of those things where it's like, what goes around comes around. We always kind of add these kind of sayings into life, don't we? And we say it and we maybe don't know really what we're saying. So like what goes around comes around. But karma is so interesting to me too. Can you talk a little bit more about karma and what it is?
Yeah, karma is interesting. Technically, the word karma can be used in different ways. Karma in one sense means an activity. So when you do karma, you're doing an activity. Karma can also be used in the context of a reaction. So, I'm getting my karma, or a reaction that you're getting according to what you've done previously. But most popularly, when we kind of use the word karma, we're talking about the law which connects those two things. So as you mentioned, the law of karma is the idea that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Even in science, there's a scientific law. Where does that law come from? So according to the Bhagavad Gita, the way that divinity sets up this world is that this world is actually meant to be almost like a cosmic university. It's a place where we come to learn lessons about who we are, about where happiness lies, and about what our ultimate purpose is. And so the whole purpose of this world is actually educational, to raise our consciousness. And one of the ways in which we raise our consciousness is by going through the law of karma. So in other words, and it's more complicated than this, but just for the purpose of understanding, you do a good action and you get a good reaction, because what it is the universe telling you or reinforcing that good mentality that you have. And you do a bad action, you get a bad reaction, which is the universe's way of telling you that you have to change the way you're interacting. And so the idea of karma is it's an educational law by which we receive certain experiences in our life in order to elevate our consciousness towards a better way of living. And so it's an incredibly profound insight, because what it means is that nothing in your life is happening by chance. I've lost my job, I'm going through a relationship difficulty, I'm experiencing a health challenge. The spiritualist in all of those situations is able to detach themselves from the immediate emotions and ask themselves, what am I supposed to learn from this? Because it's not happening by chance.
Yeah, there's that surrender element to it, where we surrender to things and somehow everything just becomes easier when you detach. And even when you are trying to manifest, and again that's a cliche word now in a way, but when you're in manifesting certain desires, I think that what I've found is when you detach from the outcome of that is generally when it works and when it happens. And that's the letting go and the control. But following that with other people, then there's a quote from Jean-Paul Sartre that says, "Hell is other people." Not very nice. But other people are in our lives. We have family, friends, just general people that we come across. They impact us in certain ways. So tying into that kind of destiny, are we just to accept what other people do? Or should we also, stand up for ourselves, and rather than just saying, oh, if that was meant to be, that's meant to be, but should we have that voice and still stand up for ourselves? And that's in our personal lives, but also when you look at conflict, as you mentioned earlier, and what's going on in the world right now and has been for, centuries, is it important to still fight for justice?
Yeah, that's a really deep question. I think when we're interacting with others, the spiritualist has two responses. A practical external response and a reflective internal response. I'll kind of explain what I mean. Say, for example, here I am in London and someone else is launching a barrage of negativity towards me. Then what I understand as a spiritualist, or what I'll do as a spiritualist, is immediately on an external level have a practical kind of external response, which is I'll protect myself. I'll try to some extent create some justice there, to try to explain to that person in whichever way I can that the way they're acting is not acceptable. So that's my practical response to it. But a spiritualist also has a reflective internal response where they simultaneously understand I needed to go through that this person is a messenger of my karma, that this person is delivering me an experience that I needed to go through in order to uplift my consciousness. And so it's almost like this dual thing is going on where you understand I needed to receive that, but at the same time, you do make a practical adjustment to kind of mitigate this situation. And so I think both things have to be there. If we only do the practical external, then we miss out on the internal evolution that comes from it. And if we only try to do the internal without addressing the situation, we might find ourselves becoming so overwhelmed by that we can't do the internal. So I think both things have to go hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree. That's really resonated with me. There's definitely a duality to it. Yeah. And there's taking action, but then there's taking action with awareness behind it, I guess. And that has such a different impact and outcome, most likely, as well.
Yeah.
So interesting. So I guess I want to finish off a bit on the topic of love, because everyone talks about it. It's, in our face all the time, and we're looking for it. A lot of people are, and it's always on the media, TV. And what is love?
Yeah, I traveled the world, and I remember one day I was out in an exhibition somewhere on a table, speaking to people about spiritual things. So I decided for the whole day, every single person I stopped, I'd ask them, can you define love for me? Because we use it as such, so loosely. And I was shocked that in the whole day, hardly anyone could give me a deep definition of love. According to the ancient Eastern teachers, the kind of the way to explain love or understand love is a completely selfless offering of oneself to another. That is what love is. To give without expectation, to serve without any ulterior motive, to innately desire the well-being and the upliftment of the object of your love. And in that way, when the Eastern teachers approach the topic of love, they approach it in a different way, not so much that we either love someone or we don't love someone, but rather we can see it more as like the unfolding of love. That in a relationship, there can be an unfolding of love as the selfless spirit to want to sacrifice to serve that person becomes more and more prominent. And what we find in the world today is that people often mistake lust for love. And so they equate love with chemistry or with attraction or with physical kind of gratification, whereas actually love is something much beyond that layer. We tell people that chemistry may bring two people together, but commitment is what will really manifest love in that relationship.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's very much a selfless giving, which is the foundation of love.
Mm. I always wonder when you say chemistry, I wonder what makes you attracted, or what it is that you're attracted to from a specific person and not another. Like, why is there that chemistry that brings those two people together, where love can potentially grow, but maybe not for another two people? That's where I'm always a bit.
Yeah, well, I guess physical attraction is definitely there.
Yeah.
And then I think sometimes on an emotional level, people gravitate towards those who they feel can fill a void within themselves. And therefore we kind of are drawn towards people who make us feel more complete. So I guess there could be different triggers which kind of bring two people together. Very interesting. But yeah, but it's really what happens in that relationship once they are together. And it's interesting, I think in the world today, we often talk about love and we really center it around romantic love, like between partners. But actually, love is meant to pervade all relationships, whether it's parent and child, whether it's student and teacher, whether it's friends. Because it's that selflessness in the relationship which brings love.
Yeah, I think it's recognizing, I believe that we're all made up of the same thing inside. So it's almost recognizing that inner essence of someone, in another person, sorry. So recognizing what your inner essence is in the other person. And then that's true love then, because that's just true connection.
Yeah. And the Bhagavad Gita talks about how we almost have three aspects to our identity. So we have a physical aspect, and then we have a subtle aspect, which is our mind, our intelligence, and so on. But the Bhagavad Gita says beyond that, the first identity, the first self, is that we're spiritual beings, we're sparks of consciousness. And it's almost like a little bit of a mystical thing. Most people have never really thought, like, what is a soul? How do I interact with someone as a soul? But that inner essence and exploring and connecting on that level is what really gives substance to a relationship.
Yeah, definitely. So what's your, I guess, lasting message to the listeners, if you had to give one?
Well, there could be many.
I know.
With what we're seeing in the world today, of course, we're looking in the world today and we're seeing so much unrest internationally, and individually we're seeing so much struggle. And it almost feels as though life should be beautiful in the world. Our individual lives should be beautiful, but we almost have these blocks which seem to be impeding that beauty of life. And so I often share with people, Einstein, he said, you can't solve the problems of the world with the same type of thinking that created them. And I guess that would be one of the messages, strong messages that I try to share with whoever I come across, that when we look at the world, when we look at our individual lives, if we approach things with a material mindset, with material thinking, that created the problems, continuing to do that will simply aggravate the problem even more. But what we really need to do is look at a shift in paradigm, looking at our lives, looking at the world from a spiritual perspective, which can really create solutions in a much more profound and sustainable way. And so, yeah, that's...
Thank you so much. And I know that the listeners are going to come away from this with so much more food for thought on a lot of things. And it's actually helped me, massively. And knowing you as well over the months has just been such an honor and a privilege. And as I said before, it's a privilege sitting in front of you and having this chat. So I really appreciate it. And Hare Krishna.
Thank you so
and thank
much.
you so
Really
much.
appreciate it.